The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. We know times lately can be tough, so it's really important that we provide all of our businesses with the best information possible to help you get through these trying times. So today we have Don Hicks from Sheakley, who is going to talk to us today about business strategies. I'm going to pass it over to him, but thank you so much for being with us here today. One more thing though, if you have any questions, please feel free to type them in the questions box and we can ask them to Don at the end of the presentation. All right, thanks, Don.
All right, thank you, Pam. Again, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining. For those that are on the webcam, I hope you can see me okay, and those that aren't, I hope you can hear me okay. So thanks for joining. I know it's tough getting away from your businesses and your personal life in regards to these topics, but it's very important. So hopefully you'll walk away with some nuggets of information. And I want to thank the BBB and Pam and her team for sponsoring this and marketing this and letting you know about it. So we're really excited about it. So today will be some specific strategies to help your business, but I want this presentation to be interactive. This presentation isn't about Sheakley or the BBB, it's about you and providing some best practices to help you and your business, and more importantly, your employees. So feel free to please be interactive through the chat. Feel free to stop me if you have any questions. I encourage the interaction. You may have a special gift for the person that interacts or chats or asks questions the most. We may have a special gift for that person. So without further ado, a little bit about me. I'm with Sheakley, and again, we partnered with the BBB, and I have been working with businesses for over 20 years. So educated in working with businesses, been doing business consulting for a number of years, and have a pretty extensive background. So some of these things that we're going to be talking about comes from my experience in the marketplace and my education and just working with clients in the past and things that we're doing for our clients now. So I promise you, this will not be a sales pitch. That's not the purpose of this meeting. It's more educational. The agenda today is we're going to be talking about the phases of this virus from a business standpoint. More importantly, what are the business strategies around that? What are the best practices? And I'm going to challenge your thinking a little bit. I encourage you to sort of take off the way you've been doing things, maybe, and sort of think about some new ways of engaging with your customers, engaging with your business, to sort of deal with some of the challenges that we have today. And obviously, we will wrap up at the end with a Q&A. But again, feel free to stop me as I go along if you have questions. Anything you want to talk about specifically on a one-on-one basis, my contact information will be towards the end of the presentation. Feel free to call me, email me if you have questions and want to set up a consultation, no cost, or consultation to sort of help you and your business. So with that, we will get started. As we all know, we've heard this term before, but it's worth repeating. What was once certain is now uncertain. And the reason I mention that is because that drives the marketplace. Consumer confidence is driven by confidence and is driven by certainty. And I don't think we have those two things quite yet. So the phases that I have found for the last 2 months for businesses is we all went through different phases in dealing with this virus. The first phase I remember was everything stopped. Right around mid-March or so, everything stopped as far as the business, the marketplace, and we were shocked. And we went into the second phase, in my opinion, where we were just shocked that we are now as a country and as a Earth, on the planet Earth, that we're dealing with this type of thing. I think we are now beginning to enter phases 3 and 4, but that brings some specific challenges as well. Phase 3 is we're now learning how to deal with it. We're living in this chaos. We're living with this uncertainty. And a lot of business owners, employees, everyone, we're trying to figure out how to deal with this. We're trying to figure out how to interpret some of the federal laws that are being passed, thankfully, some of the laws and guidelines that the state, Governor DeWine, is talking about, and we're trying to figure this out. More importantly, we're trying to figure out how to engage with our employees. They are afraid as well, and they have specific questions for you, I'm sure, as running a business or being part of a business. They have questions, and some of those questions, I bet, you don't have the answers to. And we're going to talk about that here as we go through this presentation. And then determining now what? What does the future look like? What does the economy look like? How is the economy going to respond? And the question for businesses is, am I going to be ready for that? You know, can I deal with things now, but in the future, am I positioning my staff and my business to deal with whatever environment that we are dealing with? Phase 4 is sort of where we are now. We're beginning to reopen things. However, in my opinion, that carries a lot of risk, in my opinion, and something that I would encourage you to sort of think about and plan for and put in place some practices, and we're going to talk about those here in a little bit. You may have some employees that are working from home, and there's going to be a time where they're going to need to return to work. The question is, what does that look like? And if you have employees that may be afraid to return to work, the question is, how do you deal with that? If you work in an office space, you're going to have social distancing guidelines. You may have requirements for masks and sanitation. The question is, do I have the right policies in place to deal with that if I have employees that don't want to adhere to those guidelines? So if you don't have written policies in place today and sort of thinking about how to plan for that, I would encourage you, and we're going to talk about that here in a little bit, but we are entering the phase of extreme chaos and uncertainty and potential for litigation. And litigation, what I mean is employees. Something to think about, and hopefully you don't have to deal with that. But I believe and operate on I'm a risk manager. I am trained to think about things that can impact businesses. That's what we do at Sheakley, and that's what I counsel my clients on. So none of these things happen to you, great. But my job and my passion is to prepare you for things, so if the worst happens, you are prepared and you are thinking about it. So what do you do if you do have an employee that you are wanting to bring back to work and they don't want to return to work? If you got a loan from the Paycheck Protection Program and you have to maintain a certain head count and you can't maintain that head count, what does that spell? Is that going to trigger an audit? Do you have the right policies in place if a worker gets injured? What if a worker says they got sick because of the virus and you brought them back to work? What kind of policies do you have in place to deal with that? Is that going to bring on lawsuits? The question is this bringing on a market that will invite and encourage litigation from employee to employer? I hope not. But again, the purpose of this training and thinking about these things, I told you I'm going to challenge your thinking a little bit, is to sort of plan and think about those things. Two things from an operating cost standpoint I want to bring to everyone's attention is the risk of increased cost, okay? And I'm talking about in the insurance arena. One is from a workers' comp injury standpoint. If you have workers that file workers' comp claims, the question is, are you prepared for that? And the question is, what impact will that have on your cost and your premiums? I don't think we know that yet. That's an area that Sheakley helps our clients with through the BBB, but start thinking about that. If claims start to get filed against you from your employees, are you prepared for that? The second thing is, if you are in a position where you offer medical and benefits to your employees, I would encourage you to sit down and talk to your broker. This is something that we help our clients with. Talk to your broker, talk to your carriers to see, is there a potential for claim costs, your cost for insurance and medical to increase? I used to be a broker. I personally predict that the costs are going to increase. Why? There's been over 1 million cases just in the United States. That is 1 million cases that hit the system in the last 60 days. 6 months from now, I think from a cost standpoint, that is going to overwhelm the system, and that cost has to be passed off to someone. And the question is, as a business owner and running a business, if you offer medical, is that going to impact your business? If your revenue is slow now, what is that going to do to your cost going forward? And can you sustain that? So start thinking about that, start planning for that. There are some alternative programs out there to sort of help protect you from that. But when you're looking at costs, and this is a business seminar, start thinking about when you return to work and as you deal with this, is there a risk for litigation where you have to represent yourself or hire legal counsel? What does that cost look like? And then what is the cost for my operating expenses from an insurance standpoint? Okay, so start thinking about those. And we're going to talk about some of that as we go through this presentation. A few things that I see as far as the types of businesses, and you can probably pick where you are on this scale. So unfortunately, I've had some clients and I've talked to some clients where their business just shut down, or they have to start their business over. And unfortunately, there are some businesses like that. The second category is where I see a lot of my clients and a lot of businesses that I deal with is they have had to do some layoffs or some furloughs. So when things reopen and as businesses enter into this reopen phase, the question becomes is, I need to ramp up, I need to bring some of these employees back. What does that look like? If you furlough some employees from a legal standpoint and from a human resources compliance standpoint, what does that look like to bring those employees back? And if I do, are there other risks that I need to watch out for? And again, we're going to talk about that here in a little bit. The third category is where I see most businesses right now. There's been a slowdown in revenue, okay? And to deal with that, businesses are looking for ways to reduce their operating expenses, and we talked a little bit about that today, workers' comp, insurance, and I can think of probably 10 or 15 others, but those are the two that come to mind. So if you have a slowdown in revenue, I would encourage you to find, are there ways to protect and reduce my operating expenses? And we're going to talk about that here in a little bit. If you have a slowdown in revenue, obviously you have to increase productivity. Now that is a tricky one because if you're dealing with layoffs and furloughs, how do I increase productivity? That is very tough. I typically see businesses fall into two categories, okay? And sort of think about where you are on the spectrum. If you have a business now, and if you're working in a business now, you're either you're selling to other businesses, or you're in the B2B market, okay? Or you are selling to consumers, you're in the B2C market. If you're in the B2B market, if you're selling to other businesses, or your revenue is generated primarily from other businesses, ask yourself the question, are your suppliers better than you are? If your revenue is slow right now, are your suppliers a little bit better off than where you are? Ask yourself the question if you haven't done so already. If your suppliers or your business have a slowdown in revenue too, that is a red flag. That's a risk. And I'll give you an example. I have a client now. They are in the metal stamping business. They are doing just fine as of right now. They're concerned though, their raw materials, their steel and things that they work on, their customer base has a slowdown in revenue. So although right now they're doing okay, they are concerned about the raw material shortages that supply their revenue. And if their raw materials are impacted, they're going to be impacted. So really know where your revenue sources are coming from and if they have a risk of a slowdown as well. Okay, B2c businesses, when you have consumers, that is the more challenging. That is the more challenging because your revenue is driven by consumer confidence and engaging the public, consumers. So if you have a restaurant and if you are at 30% capacity because of some of the guidelines, because consumers may be afraid to go to your restaurant, as an example, 30%, 20%, 40%. The question is that enough? You can't control, that is a uncontrollable thing. So prepare yourself for that. There may be some opportunities to reduce operating costs on another angle. So just know where you are on the spectrum, whether you're a B2B business or a B2C business. And when you're talking about slowdown in revenue, ask yourself some of those hard questions. And we're going to talk about that here in a little bit. Status quo, business as usual. There are a number of businesses that are status quo, haven't been impacted. Not a lot. I estimate maybe 5 to 8% of the clients that I talk to and work with, engage with, are in this category. Good for them. So, and obviously there's some businesses that had an increase in revenue, only certain industries, and they had to ramp up and hire new staff. So some industries are like that. So ask yourself the question, where do you fall on this spectrum? Now, here are the challenges. I predict that legacy systems may be hard to adjust to this. And what I mean by legacy systems are those businesses that have been doing business the same way for a long period of time. And to have to change to a virtual environment or a social distancing environment, or where they have older systems, an older way of thinking, not an automated process, not a lot of technology, I predict those businesses are going to be the most challenged. And we're going to talk about that here in a little bit when we're talking about technology. I would encourage you, if you are in an organization or working in an organization or running an organization, really sit down and map out if you have an older system in place as far as engaging with your customers and your employees, or does that need to be revolutionized and rejuvenated and automated to some extent? And I'm going to have some examples as I go through that. But that's going to be a challenge. If you've been doing the business the same way for the last 25, 30 years without much change, I'm just not sure that the future economy and the way businesses are going to be done in the near future, if that's going to fit the model long term. So ask those questions. I have some ideas around that on a one-on-one conversation if you fall into that category. But speed to scale is going to be the new focus. The world around us, even during this environment, is moving at a speed that I'm not sure that as a business marketplace that we are prepared for. Speed to scale is where it's going. I'm going to talk about, let's talk about that now. So when I say speed to scale and engaging with your consumers, let me give you an example. So I'll give you a story. This week, the weather is getting better, and I have a sprinkling system in my yard. I have a landscaping company that I've been using for 20-some years. When I needed to ask them about booking a sprinkler appointment, I had to go on their website, I had to go to Contact Us, and I had to call them, but they didn't have a lot of staff. I didn't know when they were going to be in my area. I didn't know what their policies and procedures were bringing someone out to start up my sprinkling system. So let me ask you a question. If you're a landscaper, if you engage with the consumers, what if you had a modern, up-to-date website to where a consumer can go right on your website, see your availability, your technician's availability, and automatically book an appointment to where you can spell out what the social distancing is, who needs to be at home, what does that process look like, and see availability right from your website. Instead of having to contact you in order to set up an appointment and go through the normal way. I think we are entering a phase to where interacting with consumers, virtualization, technology is going to help you stand out from your competitors. The normal contact us button on your website to where they can send an email or call you, I think we are entering into a phase where those days are going to pass you. Customers are very weary in regards to contacting you, someone coming out to their home, that kind of thing. And if you can engage with your customer using technology, that is going to help you stand out from the marketplace. and give a little comfort level to your consumers. Remember, this is consumer confidence. So that's just an example, landscapers. You can think of many examples of how you can virtually engage with your clients and still drive revenue and still help your customer feel a little bit better. So look at your website and see if it needs to be updated. Now I can tell you, there are technology tools out there that does that, and it's not very expensive. I'll give you an example. I would encourage you to look at some technology called Hubspot, 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 one word. It's a technology that I use. See if it's right for you. I'm not endorsing them. We don't do anything with the BBB or Sheakley with this, but this is a technology that I use that will allow you to your clients to book appointments with you right through your website using their technology. You can set up a live chat right from their technology. Depending on the number of consumers, it's about $75 to $100 a month. So the technology is out there and is not very expensive. And I encourage you to look at some of those ideas and see if it's the right fit for you. Okay, let's talk about best practices and strategies. Pam, any questions at this point?
There are no questions so far.
Okay, awesome, very good. Let's talk about some best practices. Okay, crisis management plans in place. We just talked about it a little bit, but make sure you have the right technology in place to deal with this environment that we are going to, where it's going to be more virtualization, particularly if you're on the business to consumer timeframe. Jewelry stores, dry cleaners, landscapers, any business that is interacting with consumers, making sure and do an assessment to make sure you have the right technology in place. Do you have the right technology and bandwidth to continue to have your employees work remotely? Now, we are beginning to open up here in Ohio, so some employees are beginning to go back to an office space. But if you're not comfortable with that, or if you want to continue to have your employees work remotely, do you still have the right technology in place to facilitate that on a long-term basis? Have written business continuity plans in place. Have written succession plans in place. Now may be a perfect time to look at succession plans and business continuity plans. I remember, as an example, when I'm talking about business continuity plans, plan for the unforeseen events. And what does a succession looks like if you can't work? As a business owner, who's going to step in? If you are doing as an example, if you are doing payroll yourself, or if one person is doing payroll at your organization, what if you or that person goes down? Goes down for whatever reason. What does that process look like? Who's going to step in? And are they already trained and have the technology to step in and do that seamlessly? So have some of those business continuity plans written out. I was talking about 9/11. When 9/11 happened, a lot of the businesses that were in Tower 1 had business servers and business continuity plans in place. And they had servers in another location to do business continuity. But guess where it was? A lot of them in Tower 2. They were devastated. So I'm not saying you have to get to that extent, but start thinking about business continuity plans, succession plans, if something were to happen, and sort of prepare yourself for going into the future. Number two, watch your supply chain. We talked a little bit about that, but I would encourage you to diversify your business portfolio if you can. Remember that story I told you about that metal stamping company that was getting their raw materials from the steel industry? That is 98% of their revenue. If that source of revenue goes down, they are severely negatively impacted. So start thinking about and looking for ways that if you are reliant on one supply chain for your raw materials or your products or your inventory or things that you sell or services that you consult with, do you have a second supply chain? Or is your business diversified enough that if you are negatively impacted in one area, can you still survive? So start thinking about your supply chain when it comes to your particular business. When it comes to legislation, and I'm spending a majority of my time in Sheakley as an organization, for example, counseling clients on the different federal and state laws, the CARES Act, the PPP loans, the economic disaster, the disaster loans, and so forth. I will highly encourage you, and maybe I would imagine a lot of you have already done this, but do not go it alone, in my advice, on some of these federal and state legislation. Engage an accountant, engage a professional, engage an attorney to help protect you and counsel you on this. Sheakley as an organization, this is not a sales pitch, but Sheakley as an organization, this is something to some extent we are helping our clients with. So engage with some experts to sort of help guide you through everything that you need to think through. Not only is it very time consuming to make sure you're doing the right thing with the federal and state laws and regulations, but you don't want to do something the wrong way today and it comes to bite you later. So start thinking about those and don't go it alone. Hire the experts, engage with the experts, reach out to your broker, your accountant, your attorney, and have them help you. You have a business to run. You have a business to get back online. You have employees that have tons of questions. They need you. So let the experts do it while you concentrate and focus on your business, and obviously within budget. I get it. There's a budget, there's a cost for all of this. But the question becomes, is the risk worth the budget? So just be aware of that, be cognizant of that, and consider engaging with an expert to assist. From a financial standpoint, you probably already know this, your employees are hurting. They may be hurting financially. Back in January, I did a business seminar on medical and benefits before this virus even happened. And studies have shown that most families have less than $400 to deal with emergency expenses. Less than $400. So an expense that comes up that's more than $400 for most families, and I think it's 61% of families, an expense in excess of $400 is financially catastrophic. Now, I did that seminar in January of this year. Just think where that is today. So your employees are scared, they are stressed out, they are worried about their families. So some of these things, hire their experts so they can help guide you through some of these things, not only for you and your business, but the best way to sort of engage and help your employees as well. Identify weak spots in your business critical processes. And let me talk about that here in a little now. I'm going to talk about it now. So one of the things I really predict is going to happen is we are going, as a business landscape, as a business market, we are entering a phase where, in my opinion, there's going to be a need to cross-train employees. Depending on headcount, who you bring back, how many employees you have going forward, I do see there's a need to cross-train your employees in different critical functions of your business. So I give you an example, a manufacturing company. If you have a manufacturing company, you know, someone that's maybe working in the warehouse or in the plant, maybe they have some business skills that they want to develop and get trained on, so you can bring them in to do the payroll if something were to happen. Or they want to develop some management skills. There are online courses that you can roll out at a very affordable price. I mean, pennies on the dollar. You can roll out to your employees to cross-train them on some of these critical business functions. You can train them on customer service. You can train them on sales. You can train them on reaching out to all of your current clients to make sure that they remain current clients. Cross-training your employees. Think about a strategy to where you can increase productivity by sharing in the training of your employees. I do predict that the days of one employee always doing one job, I think those days in the next 6 months to a year are going to be far and few between. I think we are going to have an industry and a market to where employees are going to be trained on various specialties and various skills. Here's the good news though. Employees want that. The studies, the statistics show that employees want to develop skills across the board. So engage an expert, think about the different areas that are critical business processes for your organization, and cross-train your employees. There are a ton of online business courses and classes and videos that your employees can take. They can take tests, they can attend videos and get certified in these different areas. What a fantastic way to maximize your current employees and cross-train them on different functions within your organization. That's one. Number two, one of the things we are beginning to see is if your business is slowed down in revenue and you have a loan from the PPP and you have to maintain headcount, one of the challenges we are seeing is employees are bringing employees back because they have this loan now from the PPP, but there's not the work demand. So they have 15 employees, but the work isn't there for 15 employees, and employees are just sitting around. I specifically had a conversation and worked on the strategy with, it was an owner in the state of Washington. He owns a 30 or 40 dry cleaners, and that's the challenge that he's having. He's bringing these employees back to work, but he has nothing for them to do. So one of the things that we are working on is rolling out an online training course for his employees. So since they can't do some of the work, the demand isn't there yet, they are training and cross-training and rolling out courses, and he's doing safety videos and all kinds of different things. So think about cross-training your employees. It's not very expensive to roll out online classes. This is something we do at Sheakley, and develop a strategy around that to maximize the productivity of your workforce. And then the last one is having the right technology in place. I've provided some examples, is Payroll. Now, Payroll is a pet peeve of mine. It really is. If you're doing payroll, and I get it. If there's a cost issue there, I get it. I do think that the days of doing payroll in-house and doing payroll on your own, I think they're going to come to an end for a lot of businesses. Automating your processes, using technology, that's where it's going. If something were to happen in the future and you're processing payroll in-house and you can't process payroll because of whatever reason, that's going to be a problem. And that is the last thing you want to have to deal with if you're dealing with an issue. Critical mission issue. So, think about having someone else do your payroll for you. Hire a vendor to do that. That is where it's going. You have too many other things that you can be focusing on versus having to do payroll taxes and city taxes and all that accounting and all the, that's required from a payroll standpoint. That's just an example. So reach out and consider that for your organization. Think about how you can automate things that you are doing manually today. Do you have processes in place that you are engaging with your employees using paper and forms, that kind of thing? I do think that the days of doing that paper manual processes, that's not going to set you apart from your competitors. And relative to the cost, it's not very expensive to put some of these things in place. It really isn't. If this was 15 years ago, the cost of having some of these technologies was a little bit cost prohibitive. Now in 2020, it really isn't relative to the value that you get. So as much as you can automate, update your websites, look at technology to modernize and update your websites, update your websites to engage virtually with your customers and your consumers. Find it attractive for them to work with you, get notified, and update it. Remember, this is a pet peeve of mine. If your website is only contact us, and it goes to a general email box or a phone number, that's not going to be enough. You need to set yourself apart from your competitors, and you need to find a way, in my opinion, you need to find a way to engage your consumers and keep them engaged and let them know that you're open for business and and spell out what is the best way that they can do business with you. That is going to set you apart from your competitors, in my opinion, more than anything, and it's very affordable to do that. So is your website dynamic? Is it modern? Is it up to date? Also take a look at all of your vendors, whether it's payroll, whether it's medical, whether it's websites, and look for it and ask yourself the question, is it more cost effective and efficient to have multiple vendors supporting my organization? Or can I engage with one vendor that's going to do a majority of the things that I need them to do? I do think that the days of having multiple vendors do a ton of different things for organizations, that's going to, in my opinion, be consolidated. In companies, and I'm having these conversations now, they're looking for, let me find one company that can do a ton of stuff. Let me find one company that can take care of engaging with my employees, doing my payroll, maybe updating my website, handling my workers' comp, providing me some consultation on medical benefits, providing me some consultation on all the laws and regulations. Find me one company that can do a lot of different things for me is something that I would highly recommend. If something in the future were to happen, it's going to be a lot easier to engage with one vendor versus having to scatter and manage several. And there's a cost efficiency thing there as well. So, Pam, any questions at this point?
Nope, no questions. Oh, wait.
Okay.
Wait, I do. Hold on. Okay. Let me pull it up. Okay. Is it feasible to have a waiver for employees who choose to work from office? Most of our employees are working remotely.
So let me make sure I understand the question. So the question is it feasible to have a waiver for those employees that are working remotely? Is that the question?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yes. It could be. So contact me. I'm going to have my contact information towards the end, and there's a lot involved in that question. Please reach out to me and we can have that discussion on a one-on-one basis, because I can take the next 15 minutes and talk about that. It's possible. So some companies are going to that to have a waiver, but there's some risk involved with that. You want to make sure that whatever policy that you have and whatever waivers that you put in place for those employees that are working in an office versus working from home, that it is communicated, shared equally in the organization. And the reason for that is that you don't want to segment and offer this to one set of employees and not the other. Mm-hmm. That can invite more problems, because if you offer it to this segment or these 3 employees, for example, and not the other 7, that 7 could be, say, why didn't I get that? Why didn't I get that opportunity? So you really have to think through the policy you're putting in place, the waivers that you put in place, and how to roll that out, communicate it, because you don't want to do something and have all the right intentions, and then you invite an unintended consequence. So I hope that makes sense. But is there a way to do it? Absolutely. Can you do it? Yes. Seek some expert advice, maybe seek some legal counsel in regards to wording those waivers the right way. But yes, you can do it. You just want to think through and get some advice in regards to how to roll that out. So hopefully that answered your question. Feel free to contact me after this seminar and we can talk more, but hopefully that helps. So, any other questions, Pam?
Nope, that's it for now.
Awesome. We're going to finish up here. We're talking best practices, and then I'll open it up for any other Q&A. But some other best practices, I think we talked a lot about this already, but the first one is increasing profitability, how to reduce your liability, and looking at some strategic goals. So the increasing profitability we talked about a little bit. So look for ways to lower all of your operating costs. I'm pretty sure as a business owner, as a business executive working in a business, you've looked at this. If you haven't, shame on you. But if you haven't, look for opportunities to lower your operating costs. And I can tell you there's no operating cost that is too low to lower. Look at everything. We talked a little bit about it when I talked about the insurances, was the medical and the workers' comp. And I'm just using those as an example. But are there ways to lower your costs if you offer a 401k? Are there opportunities to look at lowering your costs from who is supplying your goods, who is supplying your raw materials? Are there alternatives? Look at everything. Again, we talked about this. Watch out for potential and increased cost in workers' comp claims and medical claims. So look for those things. You don't want to do all the right things on the front end and then have an unexpected expense on the back end when it relates to workers' comp and medical. We talked a little bit about this, the repurposing of staff. So shifting some employees from an administrative function to more revenue producing functions. Ask yourself the question, self, do I have 2, 3, 4, 1 employee that's a key employee, and can I take them and put them into a more revenue producing task? Are they trained? Are they staffed? Do they have the right skills? Do they have the right business training in place that you can train them on? If you don't have that training, you might want to think about some of those online courses that I talked about. But really look at your organization to say, can I take a person there that is doing job A today, and how can they be more revenue producing? Don't know. Every business has their own ecosystem, that you have your own critical processes, you have your own way of doing business. I get it. But find out what fits best for you. But really ask yourself the hard question. Is this position and this function administrative, or is it going to the bottom line of my business? And do an inventory of that. Really look at your job descriptions and so forth. That goes back to the question I just answered on the waivers. If you don't have job descriptions, if you don't have an employee handbook in place, if you don't have return to work policies in place, if you don't have safety programs in place that are written, communicated, understood, and acknowledged as understood by your employees, you're opening up yourself to a ton of hurt. In the past, I don't think employers, just based on my experience, took employee handbooks, job descriptions, and some of these policies and procedures as serious as I thought they should have. I think a lot of job descriptions and employee handbooks were considered as, yeah, I got one, it hasn't been updated in a while, it's not that important, and it's becoming even more important now. So just like I answered on the waivers and those type of things, really think through some of these policies and procedures, engage a professional, and make sure you have these things in written communication form. A point, your employees want that too. They want clear understanding of what you as an organization is doing to engage with them, and more importantly, how to protect them. If you have employees, to the question that was asked earlier, if you have employees that are working from home now and you're bringing them back, and if you are going to take their temperature before they enter your location, if you are going to require them to wear masks while they are working, if you are going to require them to social distance, if you are having consumers visit your location, what does that look like? Those are very difficult policies and procedures, to put in place. It sounds good in theory when it's in your mind, but if you don't have it written down and legally vetted by an attorney or an HR expert, you could do more harm than you could solve. So just think through some of those things before you put something in place. But be careful with job descriptions and trainings and so forth. And goes back to my point is make sure you engage with an expert that can sort of help you walk through some of that stuff. Again, reducing your liability, we just talked a little bit about that. Engage with the experts, ask for the advice and counsel. Even now is more important to engage with the experts. There's so much uncertainty, and I started this presentation with certainty versus uncertainty. There's so much uncertainty. There are things in my estimation that are going to come up in the marketplace that we haven't even thought about yet. So make sure your business is protected, whether it's from your consumers, or your employees. There's a ton of risk and unknowns. So that's why I'm stressing to really engage with experts that can help walk you through this stuff. Advice and counsel, best practices, certified experts, legal attorneys, and accountants. And it doesn't have to be very expensive. Again, reach out to me. I can make some recommendations for you, or point you to some partners, through the BBB. I'm sure they have a ton of partners that they can make recommendations on as well. So that is a great resource for you through the BBB. Again, Sheakley, we do some of this stuff too. Whoever that you use, I would highly encourage you, just don't do it alone. Don't wing it. Don't get information from Google alone and do it through Google. Google is great, but I've seen more companies and more business owners and more people get in trouble by doing something that they found on Google. Don't rely on Google alone. The strategic goals, and we're going to wrap up here. The strategic goals we talked about is, again, the cross-training of your employees. One of the things I really want to mention, though, is the mental stress for your employees, and even yourself. We are all going through a very, very difficult time, as we all know. Is those hidden mental stresses that you want to watch out for. Some employees love to work from home, some don't. Some of your employees are deathly afraid to return to work, stressed out. So if you have an employee or employees that you are forcing back to work, the question is that creating more stress for them? And you look at some of these statistics from SHRM, the Society of Human Resources Management. 61% says their productivity is impacted by their mental health. 37% says that their work environment is a factor. Now, these statistics is before the virus hit. So just think about where those numbers are now. So your employees won't tell you this. They won't come to you because mental stress, mental health is a stigma. It really is. You may not even know. So I would encourage you to maybe think about putting in some services that your employees can reach out to, some independent services that doesn't impact you, but counselors, employee assistance programs. Consider the mental health and mental stress of your employees and their families. And in dealing with this, not only do they have a financial pressure from their families and everything that we're going through, but returning to work for some is creating unimaginable stress for your clients. So just know that, plan for it, talk to some of the experts, provide some resources for your employees, and just be cognizant of the fact that there's some mental stress things that you need to consider. We talked about this already, but embrace technology. Really consider embracing virtualization. Depending on when we get fully online as a country in the business landscape, in the business market, really position yourself in thinking, man, if I could run my business virtually, what would that look like? And plan for that. If we get to a point where we can have one-on-one interaction again, and we will get there, no doubt. But until that time, really plan your business for engaging with your consumers virtually and driving your revenue virtually. And the most cost-effective way to do that and position yourself for the future is having the right technology, having the right skills, and thinking through some of these ideas when it comes to virtualization is highly encouraged. And again, plan for future scenarios. So hopefully this was helpful. Pam, any other questions? And I'll open it up now to ask your questions, either open your mic or unmute or in the chat. So.
Yes, I do have some questions.
Sure.
Is there a health questionnaire that is required for all employees and customers when they enter our office? Do we need to take all employees and customer temperatures?
Great question. I do not know those guidelines off the top of my head in regards to consumers. I know that there are some organizations that are beginning to draft some policies and procedures of what that looks like. I do not know. Again, call me after, if you want to, call me after this presentation is over. I can do some research on that. I can't remember, and I do not want to give you bad advice, but there are some protocols, and businesses are beginning to put together some policies and procedures of what that looks like from employees and what it looks like for clients in regards to those requirements for taking temperature and entering their building and so forth. I just can't remember what those policies are off the top of my head. But yes, to answer your question, generally, yes. I just don't know what those specifics are. But think through that. There could be different requirements for your employees and engaging in the workplace versus your customers and your clients. If you have clients that visit your location, you're going to have to really think through what that looks like and if you can require them to wear masks. You know, if you have consumers that are engaging with you because they bought a product from you and you are telling them that they can't enter your location, the question I would have is it opening you up to any type of liability? I don't know the answer to that. So again, businesses are really trying to think through how this is going to work. And as a business, you want to plan through that. So that's a long answer to your question. You can contact me after this and I can do more research and point you in the right direction. But yes, there are some things you can do. You want to think through what that looks like and what are you required, and more importantly, what you are going to be allowed to do. So hopefully that helps. Pam?
And then we were asked for your opinion about Governor DeWine switched yesterday about public walking into this business's dental office. They no longer have to wear a mask, but it is still recommended to wear a mask in public.
Yeah.
So if you
was that my opinion? What that?
Yes, your opinion about that.
Yeah. My opinion is, I think that's going to be very difficult. I understand what the government is doing. I would encourage anyone, whatever the guidelines are from the state of Ohio and the federal government, we should all be following those. So those are guidelines that are from experts, doctors and scientists and our elected officials. So follow those guidelines. That would be my first thing. Follow those guidelines. However, I would counsel, in my opinion, do what's right for your business in keeping you and your employees, and more importantly, your customers safe. Whatever it looks like for you. Every business is, again, their own little ecosystem, and they operate and engage with differently. So if you have a business that can't do things completely virtual, I get it, and you need to engage with your consumers. Really know the guidelines that the state of Ohio is doing, but see how that impacts your business specifically, and are your employees going to be safe as a result of that? That's my opinion. So just look at the guidelines and see how that fits into your world, your ecosystem. So, other questions, Pam?
Yes.
Hopefully that helped.
And then if you are cross-training an employee, how do you handle the job description?
Yes, so great question. What I would recommend is to take an inventory of your current skill sets. First, write out and map out what are your 10, 15, 22 critical mission skill sets that you need and must have for your business. Take that list and ask yourself the question, do I have the right employees to fill that? Then once you have that, develop a strategy to fill those gaps using cross-training and online courses and so forth. Once you have that, then use an expert and develop a job description based on that work. So determine your critical mission activities. Make sure you have the right staff to fill those activities. Develop a training program to fill any gaps into that you don't have today, and then develop job descriptions that lay that out of what their new responsibilities will be. The purpose of a job description is to set the right expectation for that employee to do their job and have the right productivity. And also, what does it look like for them to return to work if an injury were to occur or a sickness were to occur? Generally speaking, that's the purpose of a job description. But it's kind of hard to develop a job description unless you know what your medical Christian functions are. Do you have the right staff, and what the training program looks like? Then develop the job description. That will be my recommendation.
And our last comment is we would just like your contact information.
Oh, yeah. So that's my very good question. Thank you for that. That's my contact information. So my name, obviously, Don Hicks, my phone number and my email. Feel free to use either one or both to reach out to me. I don't mind talking to anyone. There's no cost for having a conversation or giving some of my thoughts, doing an assessment for your organization, providing some ideas and some strategies, pointing you to some of the partners that I engage with. No cost, no obligation, nothing like that. I want to help. Again, we are a partner of the BBB, and we are a resource for you to see and bring some ideas to you and what makes sense. But that is my contact information. Also, feel free to reach out to Pam if you want to contact me. I think the presentation is going to be going out here at some point in the future if you want a copy of it, but feel free to contact me. I love talking these things and more than willing to help you. So I think we're approaching our 1 hour time frame. So Pam, are there any other questions?
There are no other questions. That's it. And I just want to let everyone know that, yes, please feel free to reach out to me if you would like Don's email or have any other questions. This will be recorded and should be up soon. Don, we did get a comment that thank you. This was very useful. And
good.
I'd like to second that and say thank you so much for being there for our businesses and presenting this information today. And thank you.
Very good. Thanks everyone for attending. Thank you, Pam. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Guys, take care. Have a great day. Be safe. Thank you.